My name is Eleanor May Whitford, and I am 83 years old. I have lived long enough to see my children grow, my grandchildren marry, and the seasons of my life change more times than I can count. But there is one season I never speak of. One moment that still echoes in my bones even after 60 years. The moment my husband slapped me on our wedding day. Before I begin this story, let me welcome everyone watching. If you love emotional, powerful stories that touch the heart and stay with you, make sure you subscribe, like the video, and turn on the notification button. These stories come from life, pain, and strength, and I share them so no one feels alone. And please, tell me in the comments where you are watching from. I want to know which part of the country my family here on YouTube comes from. Your support means everything. Now, let me take you back to the day it all began. I was 22 then, young and hopeful, with the kind of dreams only a girl raised in small-town Missouri could carry. I grew up in a wooden farmhouse with peeling white paint and a mother who believed good things came to patient hearts. And back then, I believed that too. Especially when it came to my fiancé, Howard Whitford. He was charming on the outside, the kind of man who held your hand in church and smiled at your mother like she was the first lady. Our families thought he was the perfect husband for me. I thought so too. Until the truth hit me across the face. We had just left the town chapel. The bells were still ringing, and everyone was laughing and throwing rice. My veil kept blowing into my eyes, and I remember thinking that it felt like a blessing. A soft, fluttery sign that my life would be beautiful. But when we stepped behind the building, just the two of us, Howard's smile fell away like it had never existed. His jaw tightened. His eyes sharpened. And then he whispered a sentence so cold it froze the breath inside my chest. "You embarrassed me." Before I could ask how, his hand came fast. A sharp sting cracked against my cheek, and I stumbled back into the brick wall behind me. My bouquet hit the ground. The white roses scattered like broken promises. I remember tasting blood. I remember the ringing in my ears. I remember the tears that burst out of me before I could even decide whether to cry. But most of all, I remember looking up at my new husband and seeing a stranger. All around us, the guests laughed and clapped, unaware. The world kept moving, but my world stopped. I pressed my hand to my cheek, hot and trembling. Howard knelt down, picked up my bouquet, and forced it back into my hands as if nothing had happened. "Smile, Eleanor. People are watching." So I did. Because back then, I thought marriage meant sacrificing pieces of yourself to keep the peace. Because back then, women were taught to swallow pain, not speak it. But as we walked toward the waiting crowd, I realized something that would follow me for decades. That slap was not the end. It was only the beginning. You may think this is the darkest part, but you would be wrong. The real story began years later, when the truth about Howard, our marriage, and the secret he hid for half a lifetime finally came crashing into the open. And trust me, by the time it all unfolded, the slap was the smallest part of it. Now let me leave you with this. What if I told you that years later, on the night of our 50th anniversary, I found something in Howard's desk that changed everything I believed about our marriage? Something that made me question the past, the present, and the life I had built beside him? Something that forced me to make a choice I never thought I would have the courage to make. I did not open that drawer until 50 years after the wedding day slap. But before we get there, you need to understand how the years between that moment and the night of our anniversary shaped me. How a quiet, obedient bride slowly learned that silence was a prison built by other people, and endurance was not the same thing as love. After our wedding, life with Howard became a routine of smiling in public and shrinking in private. He was never the type to bruise me where others could see. Instead, he used words the way a sculptor uses tools, carving pieces off me little by little until I hardly recognized myself. If dinner was too salty, he told me I had no sense. If I spoke too long at church gatherings, he told me I embarrassed him. If I gained a few pounds after our first child, he told me I was slipping. He never yelled in front of others. Oh, no. Howard saved his real voice for when the doors were closed. But even then, he had a way of making sure no one doubted his goodness. He volunteered at the community center. He attended every Sunday service. He never missed a donation drive. People adored him. The townsfolk thought I had married one of the finest men Missouri had ever raised. I learned early not to tell anyone otherwise. Folks see what they want to see. And people wanted to see a perfect couple. Still, life went on. We raised 2 children, Samuel and Maggie, both born with gentler hearts than their father. I protected them fiercely. I made sure they never saw his shadows. When he grew strict with them, I softened it. When he scolded them, I comforted them afterward. They grew up believing their father was firm but fair. And I let them believe it. Sometimes protecting your children means letting them hold on to the illusion that their world is safe. But marriage has cracks that widen with time. And somewhere in the middle of our lives, Howard's face began to change. He grew quieter, more distracted. Some nights he stayed late at work and came home smelling of perfume I did not wear. At first, I told myself it was nothing. Women of my generation stayed. We endured. We made excuses. But the truth is, I knew something was wrong. I just didn't want to touch it. Years passed. The children grew. Maggie moved to Oregon with her husband. Samuel joined the military and later settled in Texas. I spent holidays alone in the house Howard insisted we keep, even after the kids were gone. I cooked for him. I cleaned after him. I attended church with him. But the connection between us felt like an abandoned bridge, still standing but hollow. And every year, the distance widened. Now, here is the strange thing about time. It doesn't just age you. It reveals things. When Howard turned 72, he became softer. Gentler. He held my hand more often. He apologized for small things. He even bought me flowers for our 49th anniversary. A sunflower bouquet. My favorite. He had never remembered that before. So by our 50th anniversary, I dared to hope. Maybe age had changed him. Maybe regret had touched him. Maybe we would spend our final years with peace between us. That evening, our children flew in. We had a small dinner at home, just the 4 of us. The laughter felt real. For the first time in a long time, I saw the man I once believed he was. By the time everyone fell asleep, I sat on the sofa with a full heart, believing our story was turning into something softer. Something healed. But that night held a different plan for me. I went to the study to turn off the lamp Howard had forgotten. As I entered, I saw something unusual. The bottom drawer of his desk was slightly open. Howard was meticulous. He never left things open. Ever. I almost closed it without looking, but a thought came to me. A memory of late nights. Of perfume. Of quiet regret in his eyes. And something inside me whispered, "Look." So I knelt down. Inside were letters. Dozens of them. Old envelopes tied with a faded blue ribbon. I lifted them out slowly, my hands trembling. The handwriting was not mine. The name on the first envelope was not my name. It belonged to a woman I had never heard of. And when I opened the first letter, my knees nearly gave out. They were love letters. Deep, passionate, intimate letters. Written by a woman who seemed to know my husband better than I ever had. Letters written over decades. Decades. The earliest was dated 2 years after our wedding. The most recent was 6 months old. My breath left me. My heart turned to ice. And suddenly, every quiet night, every cold glance, every unexplained absence made sense. Howard had lived a second life. A life I had never touched. A life he had hidden from me for 50 years. But the real shock was not the letters. Not the perfume. Not the timelines. It was the final envelope at the bottom of the drawer. The one with my name on it, written in Howard's own handwriting, sealed as if he had planned to give it to me. A letter from him. A confession. And inside it was something I never imagined I would read. Something that would change everything. I held the envelope with my name on it for a long time before opening it. My hands were shaking so badly I had to press them against my skirt to steady them. The house was silent. Everyone was asleep. The lamp in the study cast a warm yellow glow across the desk, but nothing about that moment felt warm. I felt like a woman standing at the edge of a cliff, knowing that once I opened this letter, I could never go back to believing the life I thought I had lived. The paper inside was old, worn at the edges. As if he had written it years ago. Maybe even decades ago. The handwriting, careful and shaky, told me it was written after his hands had started aging. After 70, maybe. I sat down slowly, my breath heavy. And then I began to read. Eleanor. If you are reading this, it means I could not bring myself to say these words to your face. I have lived a life I am not proud of. A life divided. And you do not deserve the silence I have kept. Already, my heart tightened. I pressed my palm to my chest, as if trying to hold it together. I need you to know that I never meant to hurt you. Not that first day. Not any of the days after. I was a weak man, raised to believe I had to be strong in all the wrong ways. The slap at our wedding was not about you. It was about me. My father taught me that a wife must be controlled. I learned that lesson wrongly, and you suffered for it. I am sorry. I stopped reading. My eyes stung. The wedding day had haunted me for 60 years, and now here it was in black and white. An apology written too late for the girl I was, but maybe not too late for the woman I had become. I turned the page. As for the woman whose letters you found, her name was Ruth. She was a part of my life long before I ever met you. She was my first love. We had a child together when we were young, before the war. I tried to marry her, but things fell apart. When I met you, I believed I was ready to move on. But the truth is, I never let go of Ruth, and I never stopped carrying guilt for abandoning her and our son. A son. He had a son. My heart dropped into my stomach. 50 years of marriage, and this man never told me he had a child before our life began. A whole human being walking this earth, sharing his blood. I kept reading, numb. I did not go back to Ruth out of passion or romance. I went back because our son reached out to me in desperation. He wanted to know his father. He wanted help. He wanted connection. I did not know how to tell you. I did not know how to ask for forgiveness for something I had hidden for so long. I paused again, my breath shaking. Was this the truth? Was Howard capable of honesty even in a letter? I had spent so many years trying to understand him that I no longer knew when to trust what he said, even on paper. There was more. The letters were never meant to hurt you. Ruth died years ago. The recent ones were from our son. He reaches out when he can, though distance makes him feel like a stranger. I have helped him quietly, not because I wanted a secret life, but because I was ashamed of the life I built on top of lies. I felt lightheaded. My fingers pinched the paper tightly, holding it as if it might slip away. You deserved a better man than me. I see that now. If I could turn back time, I would give you the life you deserved. But I cannot. So I leave you with this. If ever the truth comes to you, please know that I loved you. In my own way. A flawed way. But it was love. Your husband. Howard. I sat in silence for a long time. The clock on the wall ticked louder than usual. My breath felt shallow, like my chest was fighting itself. I did not know whether to cry, to scream, to rage, or to laugh at the absurdity of it all. A son. A hidden past. Letters that spanned decades. A husband who had lived 2 lives. But the worst part? Even in his confession, there were gaps. Holes. Missing truths he hadn't dared leave on the page. A part of me wanted to tear the letter apart. Another part wanted to hold it to my chest and grieve for the marriage I had once dreamed of. As I sat there, the hallway light flicked on. I startled and turned. My daughter, Maggie, stood in the doorway wearing her robe, her hair messy from sleep. "Mom?" she whispered. "You are still awake?" I tried to hide the letters behind me, but she saw the stack instantly. Her eyes narrowed. "What is that?" "Nothing," I said too quickly. She stepped inside, concern pouring across her face. "Mom, what's going on?" The moment felt like standing on cracked glass. One wrong word and everything would shatter. I slowly handed her the letter with my name on it. She took it carefully, her eyes scanning the page. Her mouth fell open slightly. She looked up at me, eyes trembling. "Mom, he had a son." I nodded. And Maggie whispered something I will never forget. "If he could hide something this big from you for 50 years, then Mom, what else didn't he tell us?" Those words hit me like a cold wind. Because she was right. The letters revealed one truth. But I had a feeling they were hiding another. Maggie sat beside me on the edge of the study chair, the confession letter trembling in her hands. Her face was pale, her breath uneven. I could see the same shock I felt now running through her, cracking open memories she never knew needed questioning. It was almost strange, sitting there with my grown daughter, both of us old enough to know life held secrets, yet still surprised that the deepest secret of all had been living right under our roof for half a century. "Mom," she whispered again, her voice barely holding together. "How could he hide something like this? A whole child? For so long?" I stared at the lamp glowing on the desk. I did not trust myself to speak yet. My mouth felt dry, my throat stiff. My heart was both breaking and hardening at the same time, like cooling glass. We both stayed silent for a long moment, until she finally placed the letter down and reached for the stack of envelopes tied with the faded ribbon. "Do you want to read the others?" she asked gently. I shook my head. "Not yet." I was afraid. Afraid of knowing more. Afraid of finding out that my entire marriage was built on foundations weaker than paper. I thought I could handle truth at 83, but this truth felt like a boulder falling through my chest. Maggie sighed and leaned back, rubbing her forehead. "Mom, we cannot keep this to ourselves. Dad needs to talk. He needs to explain this to you. To me. To Sam. We deserve that." I almost laughed. A bitter, soft sound that surprised even me. "He wrote a letter instead of speaking. That tells me more than the words themselves." Maggie frowned. "What do you mean?" I looked at her. Really looked. Her tired eyes. Her fragile expression. The same eyes she had as a girl when she scraped her knee and wanted me to make the world safe again. "People write letters when they are afraid to tell the truth out loud," I said. "And your father was afraid of something." "But what?" I did not have an answer. Not yet. Just then, footsteps echoed down the hall. Heavy, slow, familiar. Maggie stiffened, eyes wide. The doorknob turned slightly, then stopped, as if whoever was on the other side thought better of coming in. Howard. He was awake. I stood up abruptly, sliding the letters back into the drawer. Maggie watched, confused. "Mom, what are you doing?" "Not tonight," I whispered. "I am not ready." "He deserves to explain himself," she argued softly. "And I deserve a moment to breathe before I hear whatever he has to say," I answered. The footsteps retreated down the hallway. Maggie hesitated, then nodded. She understood. Maybe not fully, but enough. We left the study quietly. Maggie kissed my cheek before going back to her room. I walked to my bedroom alone, my body heavy as storm clouds. When I opened the door, Howard was sitting on the edge of the bed, his shoulders hunched, his hands clasped in his lap. He looked older than I had ever seen him. "Eleanor," he said softly when he saw me. "You were gone a while. Everything okay?" I studied his face. Every wrinkle. Every shadow. Every line I thought I knew by heart. And I wondered how many of those lines were drawn by truth, and how many were drawn by guilt. I nodded. Just thinking. He smiled faintly, relieved. He had no idea that everything had already changed. That the walls of our marriage were shaking behind his back. "Come to bed," he whispered. "It is late." I stared at him a moment longer before replying. "In a minute." When he finally laid down and fell asleep, I stayed awake staring at the ceiling. The house was quiet, but inside my mind, questions thundered. Who was his son? Where was he now? Why had Howard hidden him for so long? And why did the latest letters feel different from the oldest ones? I needed answers, whether I liked them or not. The next morning, I woke with a decision burning inside me. I walked to the study alone, the sunrise casting a soft red glow through the windows. I took the ribbon off the letters and opened the first envelope. The earliest letters were gentle. Emotional. Filled with longing from a young woman who felt abandoned but still hopeful. But when I reached the letters from the last 10 years, the tone changed. Sharper. More urgent. Almost desperate. One sentence in particular stopped my breath. You promised you would tell her. You owe her the truth, and you owe me my place in this family. My hands shook. My heart pounded. He owed someone a place in the family. Which meant this son had expectations. Demands. Then I reached the most recent letter. Only a few months old. Howard, I do not want this to get ugly, but if you do not tell your wife the truth, I will. I have been patient for years. I am done waiting. My throat tightened. This was not just a hidden child. This was a threat. A warning. A shadow that had been growing behind my back without me seeing it. And suddenly, everything inside me clicked into a frightening new shape. This was not simply about the past. It was about the present. And somewhere out there was a man I had never met, someone tied to my husband by blood, someone who felt wronged, someone who wanted something from us. Something Howard feared. I felt the truth rising in me, chilling and dark. This was not the whole story. There was more. Much more. I sat there at the desk, the most recent letter open in front of me, the words burning into my mind like a brand. I read them again and again, hoping I had misunderstood. Hoping there was some innocent meaning hidden beneath the threat. But there wasn't. If you do not tell your wife the truth, I will. The truth. Not a truth. The truth. Something bigger than a hidden relationship. Something deeper than a secret child. My breath grew thin, shallow. I pressed my palm against the wood of the desk to steady myself. For 50 years, I lived with a man who kept his emotions inside locked boxes. Now one of those boxes had broken open, and whatever was inside was coming straight for me. That morning, the house was quiet except for the soft ticking of the hallway clock. Maggie and Samuel were still asleep. Howard sat in the kitchen alone drinking his coffee, unaware that the life he built was unraveling one thread at a time. I folded the letter and held it in my lap. For a moment, I closed my eyes and listened to the wind brushing against the window. I didn't want to confront him. After decades of pain, silence, and false peace, I didn't want a war. But I also knew I could no longer sit in darkness. I walked into the kitchen. Howard looked up, startled. His eyes were tired, but still gentle. A softness he had only started showing in his old age. "Morning, Eleanor," he said, forcing a small smile. "You're up early." I held the letter up between us. His smile dropped. "Howard, we need to talk." He stared at the envelope, his face draining of color. The mug slipped slightly in his hand, coffee sloshing onto the table. He set it down slowly. "Where did you find that?" He whispered. "You left the drawer open," I replied. "Or maybe God opened it for me." He closed his eyes, breathing heavily. For a moment, he looked like the boy he once must have been, scared, overwhelmed, unsure which lie to use next. Eleanor, I can explain. I sat opposite him, placing the letter on the table between us. Then explain. His lips trembled. His eyes darted to the hallway, checking if the children were coming. They weren't. Please, he whispered. Not now. Not with them here. So you can lie to them too? I asked softly. He winced as if I had slapped him. I placed my hands on the table, steady and firm. Howard, I read every letter. I know about your son. I know about Ruth. What I want to know is, what is he threatening to tell me? Howard swallowed hard. Tears filled his eyes. Real tears. Not the staged ones he used to use when he wanted sympathy from the church ladies. These were heavy, painful tears. Eleanor, he said, his voice breaking. He's angry. He thinks I owe him something. What do you owe him? Howard hesitated. He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. His breath quickened. He thinks I owe him a place in this family. And do you? I asked quietly. Howard's jaw clenched. I failed him, Eleanor. I failed him before I even met you. And now he wants justice. I leaned forward. Justice for what? Howard's voice was barely a whisper. For the life he never got to have. For a moment, the kitchen blurred around me. The floor felt unsteady. My chest tightened. There was more. I could feel it pressing through the silence, begging to be spoken. Howard dragged his trembling hands down his face. I was drafted at 19. Ruth was pregnant. I left thinking I would come back and take care of them, but, he paused, choking on the words. When I returned, something had happened to her. Something terrible. And our son blamed me. He still does. I stared at him. What happened? Howard shook his head violently. I can't, Eleanor. I can't say it. Not yet. I stood slowly. My voice came out steady, but I felt like shattering. Then I will ask him myself. Howard's eyes shot open. Eleanor, no. I stepped back. If you will not tell me the truth after 50 years of marriage, I will find it elsewhere. He reached out weakly. Please, don't go looking for him. You don't understand what he wants. I turned to him. Then make me understand. He looked away. His silence was louder than any scream. I left the kitchen without another word. Later that morning, Maggie found me sitting on the front porch, the cold breeze brushing against my skin. She wrapped a blanket around my shoulders and sat beside me. Mom, she whispered, are you okay? I shook my head. No, Maggie. I am not. She rested her head on my shoulder. Did he tell you anything? Not enough. We sat quietly. Birds chirped on the bare trees. The world felt painfully normal while mine was falling apart. After a long pause, Maggie spoke. Mom, there's something you should know. I turned to her slowly. What is it? She swallowed. Last night, after I went back to bed, I heard Dad talking on the phone. He was whispering. I couldn't hear everything, but I heard one sentence clearly. My breath caught. What did he say? Maggie's voice trembled. He said, I told you not to come here. My family cannot handle the truth. My heart pounded. Here? He was coming here? A stranger. A secret. A man tied to my husband by blood and betrayal. Coming to my home. Howard had been afraid of something for years. And now, whatever he feared was on its way. I stood abruptly, my legs unsteady. Mom, where are you going? Maggie asked. To prepare, I whispered. Because something tells me that soon, he will be standing at our door. The morning the stranger arrived felt strangely calm, as if the world itself was holding its breath. The sky was soft gray, the the kind that promised rain but held it back just long enough to make everything feel heavy. I moved around the house slowly, touching things I had dusted for 50 years. Picture frames. The edge of the mantel. My wedding ring, still on my finger, still carrying a story that was no longer true. Maggie watched me quietly as I brewed a pot of tea. She knew better than to press me with questions. She simply stayed close, like she did when she was a girl and sensed storms coming even before the thunder rolled. Around 9 o'clock, Samuel came into the kitchen with sleep still in his eyes. "Morning, Mom. Everything all right? You look pale." Part of me wanted to protect him the way I always had. The other part knew protection was no longer possible. Not with what was coming. Before I could answer, footsteps echoed from the hallway. Howard slowly entered the room. His shoulders hung low, his eyes shadowed. He looked older than his years, thinner than last night, as if the truth itself was draining the strength out of him. He cleared his throat. "We need to talk. All of us." Maggie and Samuel sat. I remained standing, hands folded on the counter. Howard looked at me first. The fear in his eyes did not belong to a man who had lived a double life. It belonged to a man who knew the walls were closing in. I spoke before he did. "Did you talk to him again last night?" Howard's jaw tightened. "Yes." "When is he coming?" Howard swallowed hard. "Eleanor, he is already on the way." My heartbeat slowed, not sped up. That surprised me. It was the kind of calm a person gets when they finally accept that everything is about to change. Samuel frowned. "Dad, who are you talking about? What is going on?" Howard clasped his hands together. His fingers trembled. "Your brother." Both children froze, eyes wide, breaths caught in their throats. The silence in the room settled like dust, thick and impossible to ignore. Samuel blinked. "Brother? What do you mean, brother?" Howard took a painful breath. "Before I met your mother, I had a son. With a woman named Ruth." Maggie whispered, shaky and soft, "How old is he?" 60. Howard said quietly. I heard Samuel exhale sharply. 60. A whole lifetime. A whole sibling he never knew existed. Betrayal took on new shapes in their eyes. I could see it. Feel it. Howard turned to me. "He is not coming here to reconnect, Eleanor. He is coming here for answers. And maybe even something more." "What more?" I asked. Howard looked down at his trembling hands. "Money. Recognition. A place in the family. I do not know. He refuses to tell me. He only says he is done being ignored." Maggie pressed her hand to her mouth. "Oh my God." Samuel rubbed his temples. "Dad, how could you hide this from us?" "From Mom?" Howard looked at me then, not at them. "I was afraid." "Of what?" I asked. He hesitated too long. Before he could answer, a car engine rumbled outside. Loud. Close. The kind of engine that didn't just arrive, but announced itself. Maggie's eyes widened. "Someone is here." Howard stood up but wavered, weak on his feet. I walked to the living room window and pulled back the curtain. A dark blue truck sat in our driveway. The driver's door slowly opened. Out stepped a tall, broad-shouldered man with silver hair pulled back into a low tie. His face was lined, weathered, and striking in a way that felt familiar. Too familiar. The shape of his jaw. The slope of his forehead. The way he scanned the house slowly, not with curiosity, but with a purpose sharpened by years of waiting. He looked like Howard. Older? No. Harder. Like a storm carved into human form. My breath left me. He walked toward our front door. Every step was steady and controlled, as if he had rehearsed this moment for years. Maybe he had. The doorbell rang. A soft but chilling sound that seemed to echo through the walls. Howard reached for my arm. "Eleanor, please. Let me speak first." I pulled away gently. "You had 50 years to speak first." Maggie clutched Samuel's hand. They both looked terrified. Grown adults, yet suddenly small again, like children waiting for something they did not understand. The doorbell rang again. Heavier this time. I walked toward the door. My heartbeat steady. My back straight. My spirit older, but stronger than ever before. I opened the door. The man looked down at me with eyes as sharp as broken glass. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The cool morning air swept between us. Then he said my name before his own. "Eleanor." Hearing my name in his mouth felt strange. Foreign. As if he had been saying it for years in conversations I was never part of. I studied him silently. He finally continued. "My name is Daniel. Daniel. The missing son. The shadow in the letters. The secret that had lived in my home longer than my own children had." He took a slow breath. "I think it is time you heard the truth. The real truth. Not the one he told you." He tilted his head toward the kitchen where Howard waited, frozen. A cold weight settled in my chest. The real truth. Which meant everything I had heard so far was only the beginning. I stepped aside and let Daniel enter. Because ready or not, the past had finally come home. Daniel stepped into the living room with the kind of quiet confidence that came from living a hard life and surviving it. His boots left faint marks on the rug, not from dirt, but from weight. From presence. From years of carrying anger like a second spine. Maggie and Samuel stood behind me, tense and frozen, their eyes glued to the stranger who had just claimed a place in our family without permission or warning. Howard appeared in the doorway of the kitchen. He looked fragile, small, even. A man who had spent his whole life building a wall of control, now crumbling under the truth that had finally come knocking. Daniel's eyes locked onto his father's. Cold. Sharp. Nothing welcoming in them. "So," Daniel said slowly, "this is the home you built." Howard swallowed. His voice cracked. "Daniel, thank you for coming." Daniel didn't respond. Instead, he turned his gaze to me. His eyes softened only slightly. "I have been waiting a long time to meet you, Eleanor." I nodded. My hands were steady, though my chest felt like a storm. "Please, have a seat." He sat on the couch, never taking his eyes off Howard. The rest of us found our places in the room. Maggie sat beside me. Samuel stood with his arms folded, jaw clenched. Howard sat across from Daniel like a student awaiting judgment. Daniel leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Before I say anything, Eleanor, I need to apologize. I'm not here to hurt you. You didn't deserve to be dragged into this mess. None of this was your fault." His voice was deep, steady, and carried a pain that wasn't new. "But," he continued, "I'm done protecting him." Howard flinched. "Dad," Samuel said sharply, "you need to speak up. It's time." Daniel shook his head. "No. He's had 50 years. His time is over. This time, you listen to me." Silence gripped the room like a fist. Daniel exhaled deeply. "Let me start where it really began." He rubbed his hands together once, like he was bracing himself for the story he had told no one in decades. "My mother, Ruth, she wasn't just some woman he dated before the war. She was in love with him. She believed he would come back for her. She believed they would be a family. After he left, she waited. She wrote. She prayed. And when he didn't return, she raised me alone." Howard looked down, shame burning through him. Daniel continued. "She never told me she hated him. Never. She told me he was brave. That he loved us. That he would come back." His voice cracked for a moment. She gave me hope where she had none left. What happened to her? I asked softly. Daniel's jaw tightened. Life happened. Hard life. She worked 2 jobs. Became sick. By the time she died, I was 22. Alone. Angry. With nothing but a name and a lie she had used to comfort me. Maggie put a hand to her chest. Daniel wasn't finished. When Mom died, I searched for him. And when I found him, he was married. Living well. Fine house. Beautiful wife. Happy children. Howard's eyes filled with tears. Eleanor, Don't, Daniel snapped. Don't lie to her again. He turned back to me. When I confronted him the first time, he gave me money. A check. Told me he was sorry but he had a new life now. That I should move on. A gasp escaped my throat before I could stop it. Howard whispered, Daniel. I was scared. I didn't know what to do. Daniel ignored him. I took the money, because I needed to survive. But that check didn't buy forgiveness. It bought silence. Samuel's fists clenched. You paid him off? He shouted. Howard didn't answer. Daniel leaned back, his expression dark. Years passed. I tried to build a life. A family. A future. But something kept pulling me back here. Back to him. Back to the truth he hid not just from you, but from himself. I shook my head. What truth? Daniel's eyes softened with something that looked almost like grief. I didn't want to show you this today, but you need to understand. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a folded document. He placed it on the coffee table. I stared at it. The paper was worn, creased, clearly handled many times. What is that? Maggie asked. Daniel spoke slowly, each word deliberate. It's a medical report. Mine. I frowned, confused. Medical? Daniel nodded. A genetic test. Something my doctor ordered after I started having heart problems. He thought it might be inherited. Something passed down. My breath caught. From Howard? Daniel hesitated. No. Not from Howard. The room went silent. Not from Howard? I whispered. Daniel met my eyes with devastating honesty. I am not his biological son. Howard gasped. What? Daniel nodded. He's not my father by blood. I felt my body go cold. I looked at Howard. He looked stunned. Confused. Terrified. Daniel continued. But here's the part that matters. My mother always believed he was my father. And she told me he was. She died believing that. And I lived my entire life believing it too. Samuel whispered, shaking his head, but then, why all the letters? Why the anger? Daniel leaned forward, his face tight with emotion. Because whether or not he was my biological father, he abandoned us. He left my mother pregnant and alone. He never checked if she survived. He never came home to see if I made it. He didn't even try. He looked at Howard with fire in his eyes. You may not be my blood, but you were still the man who walked away. Howard crumbled into the chair, tears streaming down his face. I didn't know, Howard choked out. I swear, Daniel. I didn't know. Daniel didn't blink. But you never looked. And that's the part one can't forgive. The room felt like it was sinking. The truth, ugly and raw, lay open on the table between us. This was deeper than betrayal. Deeper than infidelity. Deeper than lies. This was abandonment. Guilt. A lifetime of wounds. And I knew then that the next chapter of my life would not be about uncovering what happened. It would be about choosing what to do with it. Because this story was far from over. The room stayed painfully silent after Daniel's words, as if the air itself was trying to make sense of everything we had just heard. My mind spun, not from the revelation that Daniel wasn't Howard's biological son, but from the weight of what was true. A boy had grown up believing in a father who didn't come back. A mother had died waiting for a promise that never returned. And a man, my husband, had spent 50 years pretending the past disappeared simply because he walked away from it. Daniel breathed slowly, collecting himself. His voice was steady, but his eyes told the truth. He wasn't here for pity. He wasn't here for drama. He wasn't here to fit into our lives like a missing puzzle piece. He was here for closure. And maybe something more. Howard wiped his face with trembling hands. He looked defeated, older, smaller, broken in a way I had never seen. I wanted to feel sympathy. But sympathy is hard to give a man who spent decades shaping your life with half-truths. Daniel leaned back on the couch, his hands clasped tightly. Let me be clear. I didn't come here to ask for a place in this family. I didn't come for money. And I'm not here to ruin your lives. Samuel's shoulders softened. Maggie let out a breath she'd been holding. Daniel continued. I came because I spent most of my life carrying anger that didn't belong to me. Anger that lived in silence. And I am tired. I'm tired of burying a story that never should have been mine to carry. Howard tried again, voice trembling. Daniel, if I could go back in. You can't, Daniel interrupted firmly. And honestly? I'm not here for your apology. I'm here for the truth. The truth my mother never got. The truth I needed to hear before my own life runs out. For the first time, I noticed the exhaustion beneath his words. A deeper exhaustion than grief. His breathing was slightly strained. His hand pressed gently to his chest as if he was trying to steady something inside him. You're sick, I said quietly. The room turned to me. Daniel's eyes dropped for a moment before he nodded. I have a heart condition. 3 surgeries already. My doctor thinks there's only so much more they can do. Maggie covered her mouth. Samuel sat down abruptly, as if the weight of the revelation forced him to the chair. Daniel continued. That's why I did the genetic test. I needed to know if there was anything I should prepare for. Anything I could warn my own children about. That's when I found out that Howard wasn't my father by blood. Howard whispered, voice trembling with disbelief, I never knew. Not once. I swear it. Daniel nodded. I believe you. But it doesn't change what happened. He paused, then turned to me. Eleanor. I'm sorry if any of this hurts you. You were the one person in this whole story who did nothing wrong. His kindness broke something in me. Tears stung my eyes, but I held them back. I had cried enough silent tears in my marriage. These would not fall for pain. Only for truth. What do you want? I asked softly. Daniel took a long breath. Not revenge. Not blame. Just clarity. Just honesty. Anne. He hesitated. And I want to know who my father really was. Howard flinched. Eleanor is right, I heard him whisper softly, almost to himself. God opened that drawer. Daniel turned toward Maggie and Samuel. I'm not asking you to see me as a brother. I'm not even asking for a relationship. I've lived this long without you. I can finish my life that way too. But I needed to say this out loud. For me. For my mother. For the years I spent thinking I was forgotten. None of us knew what to say. The silence wasn't tense, it was sad. Heavy. Honest. Finally, Howard cleared his throat. Daniel. I'm sorry Ruth went through that. Truly. I was young, stupid, scared. But you deserved better than what I gave you. Daniel stared at him for a long moment. I don't want your guilt. I want the truth. All of it. Starting now. Howard nodded slowly, shoulders shaking. I'll tell you everything. Everything I remember. Everything I tried to forget. Daniel leaned back, arms folded. Then start talking. Howard opened his mouth, and paused. His eyes flicked toward me, then toward the hall. His voice cracked. Not here. Not with everyone listening. Daniel's jaw tightened. Hiding again? No. Howard shook his head. In private. Please. Daniel studied him a moment, then shrugged. Fine. But don't think I'll let you run from it. They both stood. Samuel jumped up. Should we all go? No, Daniel said firmly. This conversation is between the two of us. I felt tension rise again, but something inside me knew Daniel was right. Whatever they needed to say began long before I existed. They walked down the hall. Howard looked at me once, eyes full of fear and regret. Then they disappeared into the study. The door clicked closed. The three of us sat in silence for a minute. Maggie hugged herself tightly. Samuel rubbed his forehead, pacing. Mom. Maggie whispered, do you think Dad can handle this? I answered honestly. I don't know. We waited. 10 minutes. 20. 30. The house felt heavier with each passing second. Finally, after nearly an hour, the study door opened. Daniel stepped out first. His face was pale. Hard to read. But his eyes, not angry anymore. Not sharp. Just tired. He walked to me slowly. Thank you for listening, he said. For being here. I didn't expect that. Where is Howard? I asked. Daniel glanced back toward the study. He needed a moment. Maggie's eyes widened. Samuel started toward the hallway. But Daniel gently raised a hand. He's not hurt. He's just facing something he buried too deep for too long. Daniel turned toward the front door. I think this is where I leave. For now. For now? I asked. He nodded. There's more I need to understand. More I need to verify. But. He paused. I'll be back. And something in his tone told me that whatever truth Howard confessed, it wasn't the end. It was the beginning. The door closed behind him. The moment the door clicked shut behind Daniel, the house felt different. Not quieter, he hadn't been loud. Not hostile, he'd shown us more honesty in 1 hour than Howard had in 50 years. But different, as if his presence had pulled the truth out of the walls and left everything exposed. Samuel paced the living room, rubbing the back of his neck. Maggie sat curled on the couch, arms around her knees, staring at the hallway with wide, frightened eyes. I stood by the living room window, my hand pressed lightly to the glass. Outside, Daniel's truck reversed slowly down the driveway. He didn't speed off. He didn't slam the door. He simply drove away with the calmness of a man who had carried storms in his heart for far too long. And somewhere down that hall, Howard sat alone in the study. The man I had married. The man I had stayed with through decades of silence and smiles and secrets. The man who had just learned he was not the father of the son he abandoned, yet was still responsible for abandoning him. I breathed deeply, preparing myself to face him. Mom, Maggie whispered, are you going to talk to him? I nodded slowly. I need to. Do you want us to come? I shook my head. This conversation was 50 years overdue. I needed to hear the truth without anyone else's voice shaping it. With steady steps, I walked down the hallway and opened the study door. Howard sat in the same chair where I had found the letters. His hands were pressed against his face. When he looked up, his eyes were red and swollen. Not the manufactured tears he used to give people during church confessionals. These were raw. Exhausted. Old tears finally released. Eleanor, he whispered, his voice cracking like a fragile branch. I never meant for any of this to touch you. I stepped inside, closing the door behind me. What did you tell him, Howard? He swallowed hard. A lifetime of fear trembling in his throat. Everything. He bowed his head. Everything I've run from since I was 19. Sit, he said softly. I sat across from him, my heart steady but ready for whatever came next. Howard wiped his face. When I went to war, I was terrified. I had never left Missouri before. I had never slept anywhere but my parents' house. And Ruth, she was all I had at the time. I loved her in the way a boy loves, not a man. But when I left her pregnant, I told her I'd come back. That we'd be a family. His voice shook. I believed that when I said it. I really did. Then why didn't you go back to her? Howard took a deep breath. Because when I came home, everything looked different. My father was sick. My mother was overwhelmed. I took over the house, the farm, the responsibilities. By the time I went to see Ruth again, she was gone. Gone where? He shook his head. No one would tell me. Her landlord said she moved. Neighbors didn't know. Some said she'd run away. Others said she'd married someone else. I asked everyone. No one had answers. So you stopped looking? Howard lowered his gaze. I was 21, Eleanor. I had no idea how to track someone. No money to hire help. No leads. I convinced myself she'd found a better life without me. A fresh start. So I built a life too. He glanced around the house, the furniture, the walls, our life. But I never forgot her. Or that child. Not truly. My voice hardened. Yet you married me and said nothing. He flinched. I thought the past was behind me. I didn't want to ruin our future with something that might not even matter anymore. But it did matter, Howard. To that boy. To Ruth. And to me. Howard nodded slowly. You're right. You're absolutely right. What happened when Daniel finally found you? Howard looked up, tears spilling again. He came to me at work one day. Angry. Hurt. I didn't handle it well. I panicked. I told him I had a new life. A wife. Kids. Responsibilities. I thought giving him money would help him start fresh. I stared at him. You paid him to go away. He bowed his head. I didn't see it that way at the time. But yes. That's exactly what I did. There was silence between us. Heavy. Unforgiving. And the later letters? I asked. The recent ones? Howard sighed deeply. When Ruth died, he came again. This time softer. We talked. He didn't want money. He wanted connection. But I couldn't face it. I couldn't face the man I abandoned. So I stayed distant. Sent small checks. Wrote half-hearted apologies. And convinced myself that was enough. It wasn't, I said. Howard nodded. No. It wasn't. And when he learned I wasn't his father, everything came crashing down. I leaned forward. What did he say to you in this room? Howard's voice dropped to a whisper. He said he forgave his mother for believing the wrong man. Forgave himself for hating me. But he couldn't forgive the fact that I never looked for them harder. That I let guilt guide my decisions instead of courage. I stared at him. Did he ask anything else from you? Howard hesitated. Yes. A chill ran through me. What? He asked me something I never expected. Something that broke me. Howard's shoulders shook. His voice cracked into pieces. He asked me to help him find his real father. I sat back slowly. Oh. Howard nodded through tears. He wants answers before he dies, Eleanor. He wants his real story. His real name. His real beginning. And he wants me, the man who abandoned him, to help him do it. The weight of those words filled the room. What did you say? I asked softly. Howard lifted his trembling hands. I told him yes. And for the first time in my life, I saw a man who wasn't hiding. Who wasn't pretending. Who wasn't trying to be strong by being cruel. I saw a man who was finally willing to make things right. Even if it broke him. I took a deep breath. Howard, we can't undo the past. But maybe we can help him find the truth. Howard looked at me, eyes hopeful and terrified. You would help me do that? I hesitated. Then nodded. For Daniel. Not for you. And the look in his eyes told me he understood. But neither of us realized that the journey to find Daniel's real father would uncover a truth far darker than infidelity. A truth that would shake the foundation of everything we thought we knew. For the next 3 days, our home felt like a place suspended between past and future. Howard stayed quiet, moving slowly through the house like a man carrying stones in his pockets. Maggie and Samuel spoke in whispers, still trying to adjust to the idea that their father had lived an entire life in secret. And I felt myself aging and waking up all at once, as if the truth had peeled back a layer of fog I did not know I'd been living under. On the 4th morning, Daniel called. His voice sounded weaker than before, but clearer too. Eleanor, he said, I've been thinking. If I'm going to find my father, I need help. I need someone willing to tell me the whole story. I told him the truth. Howard is ready. And so am I. He was silent for a moment before whispering, thank you. He arrived the next day, walking slowly, carefully, his hand pressing lightly to his chest. His illness was real. His time was uncertain. Yet he stood straighter than I had ever seen him. As if the truth itself had given him strength. Howard, Maggie, Samuel, and I sat together in the living room when Daniel pulled out a folder of documents. Old photos. A small journal. A military record. Pieces of Ruth's life that he had carried with him for years. I watched him place them on the coffee table. This, he said, tapping the journal, was my mother's. The journal was small, the leather worn. Daniel opened it carefully. Inside were pages filled with her handwriting. Words written by a young woman who had loved deeply, and waited even deeper. He flipped to a page marked by an old ribbon. This is where the truth begins. The page was dated 8 months after Howard left for the war. Daniel read aloud. I fear I will raise this child alone. I went to find Howard today, but his father slammed the door in my face. He said Howard had moved on. That I should do the same. He said I should stop bringing shame to their home. Howard's head snapped up. That is not true. My father never told me anything. Daniel nodded. I know. Keep reading. I blinked away the sting in my eyes as Daniel's voice continued. Another man came to see me today. A soldier. Said he was a friend of Howard's. Said he was bringing me news. He told me Howard had written to him and said he did not want a child. Did not want a wife. Did not want me. This soldier told me to stop waiting. That I should forget about the past and live my life. Howard's hands shook. That is a lie. I never said that. I never wrote that. Daniel lowered the journal, his voice calm. I know you did not. I found out who did. We all leaned forward. Daniel continued. The soldier who visited my mother was not delivering news. He had his own intention. He had known her before. Wanted her. And when he realized she still cared for you, he told her lies to break her hope. Howard looked stunned. Who was he? Daniel reached into the folder and pulled out a photograph. A young man in uniform, smiling beneath a tree. This man, Daniel said. Howard leaned closer. His eyes widened. I remember him. James Holloway. He was in my unit. Daniel nodded. He told my mother that you abandoned her. He told her you refused to see her. He used her heartbreak to get close to her. Maggie gasped softly. Samuel cursed under his breath. Howard whispered, he tricked her. Daniel nodded. And 9 months after he visited Ruth. I was born. The room fell silent. Howard's voice trembled. So he is your biological father? Daniel nodded once. Yes. And he died in a bar fight when I was 10. I never met him. Never knew his name until last month, when I finally found the truth buried in old hospital records. He looked at Howard again. You were never my father by blood. But you were the man I believed in. The man my mother believed would come home. The man she waited for. And you're still the man I needed the truth from. Howard bowed his head, tears falling freely. I am so sorry. For not finding her. For not fighting harder. For everything. Daniel's voice softened. I forgave you the day I walked into this house. I just didn't know how to say it. I felt my heart release something heavy. Something old. Something that had been sitting in me since the day Howard slapped me behind the church, when my life began with a bruise and silence. Daniel turned to me. Eleanor, thank you. For letting me be here. For listening. For giving this story a place to finish. I reached out and held his hand. You are part of this story whether any of us expected it or not. Daniel smiled faintly. He began to stand but stumbled slightly. Howard reached out to steady him. For a moment, I saw the man Howard could have been. The man he should have been. Daniel looked around the room. I have one last thing to say. Life is short. Too short for secrets. Too short for shame. Too short for silence. I came here to find a father. I did not find one. But I found the truth. And that is enough. He squeezed Howard's shoulder. And I found closure. Later that evening, when Daniel left, the house felt lighter. Not healed entirely. But opened. A place where truth could breathe. Howard sat beside me on the porch as the sun went down. Eleanor, he said softly, I never deserved you. I looked at him and answered honestly. Maybe not. But you have a chance to be better now. Whatever time you have left, use it well. He nodded, tears glistening in the fading light. And for the first time in my life, I felt free. Not because the truth was easy. But because I had finally learned that survival is not silence. It is strength. It is choosing yourself even after years of being chosen last. It is letting the truth win. And it did. To everyone listening, thank you for staying with this powerful story until the very end. If this touched your heart, make sure you subscribe, like the video, and turn on the notification button so you never miss a new story. And please tell me in the comments where you are watching from. Your support helps us keep bringing you emotional stories like this. This is Eleanor's story. A story of truth, forgiveness, and strength. And I hope it reminds you that no matter your age, your past, or your pain, it is never too late to find your voice.